And so that book, it's all published, printed, ready to go. We're just in the process of building a website, and so within a couple of weeks, there'll be an ability to buy that. So that's one of my new things, is writing books. So, and songs, you know, that's the other thing that I've started doing more and more of. And one of the things that kind of occurred to me was that I started a YouTube channel like in 2009, so that's quite a while ago now. And I started doing videos, different types of videos. For the most part in my career, I was not the cameraman. I was more the producer, the writer, or the talent. And I worked with, you know, really outstanding professionals. But when the Great Recession hit, you know, you have to do what you got to do. And so that's when I got this camera, and I started doing sort of low-level productions, things for myself or other clients. And then when I started doing the songwriting a bit more, I found that using video was a tremendous tool. And that's the first thing I want to talk about is, you know, why we all should, as songwriters, why we might want to be using video. And I'll just go through a couple of the things that it's all right here on this little sheet. So if you think about, you know, all the things we do, we enter contests, we have to, sometimes we have to audition for jobs, we may be involved in co-writes with people who we may not be in the same room with. And so that's one great use of video, is to share your songs. It's really an incredible way to co-write. Let's say if you guys, anybody's doing a co-write, you know, somebody might be working on the tune, and then somebody else may be working on the lyrics, but somehow you gotta meet in the middle, and you gotta share. And so video is a tremendous way of sort of sharing and working on songs, like co-writing. So I think it's really exceptionally good that way. Another thing that I like to do, because, you know, when, you know, the story went that Keith Richards, you know, he used to record into one of those tiny little cassette recorders, because I don't know, I think it's universal. There's no writer that remembers all their creativity. You know, it's in one ear and out the other, and if you don't get it down somehow, you've lost it. And so, like, one morning he woke up and there's a little cassette, you know, he's probably still drunk or something, and all of a sudden he heard Satisfaction come back at him on his Casio cassette player. And that's how the riff for Satisfaction came into being. It's because he was recording himself when he was up really late at night, messing around. And I do this all the time too now. I mean, it's just kind of the way I do it, because...
Wait, did they have a cassette player at that time?
Yeah.
Real.
No, tiny little.
Those were available in the 60s.
Yeah.
Cassettes were? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, little tiny little cassettes. Sure. So now what I do is I use my iPhone, and you know, if you go to your video on your phone, and then you turn it around like you're going to do a selfie or something, you get a little stand, you put it on your whatever you do. I have a coffee table, so you know, this is how I write songs now. So it's like, I don't know where the audio is. So this is like, you're just messing around, you know, but you're recording it. So what I find is, and then I take these and I put them into, I don't know what the words are, but you know.
Hey, wait, I think I have that one copyrighted.
You got that one?
No, yeah.
You know, so you can get a chord structure, you can get a melody, and then you know, all you need to do is start working on some words. And what I find is I call them frags or fragments, song frags, and I'll upload all those into like an editing program. I use iMovie. It's the most basic thing on an Apple computer. In fact, I use an old version of iMovie because, you know, I learned on that like 10 years ago, and it's like, I don't want to keep learning all these new editing systems.
GarageBand is the same way. It's like every upgrade, they do something different.
Right.
Figure out.
Right, and so I've got a kind of primitive editing system that works for me, but I can upload every so often, just like you might upload your photos to your computer to store them. I upload my song frags too, and I put them in my iMovie clips or projects or events, whatever. And I kind of go, every so often I'll go back and I'll re-listen to them. And if I find a particular tune that shows up more than once or keeps coming up, I think, well, maybe that's the one I ought to work on, you know. And so I think the video is a tremendous tool for songwriting for yourself.
Tell me again how you get it into the iMovie. Do you drag and drop them? Do you hook the iPhone up to?
I hook the iPhone up to the computer.
And do you find them in iTunes then, or?
Import.
I import them from my iPhone into Photos.
Okay.
Because you know,
So automatically import photos. Okay.
they'll go into Photos, and then from Photos I import them into the iMovie program.
So can you drag and drop them, or do you have to go?
You can drag and drop.
You can.
So there's, you know, I mean, everybody's going to have their own methods. You know, I mean, like I say, I'm not a professional editor, but you know, you learn enough to be, you know, to get some things done. You know, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're a pro at it. Okay?
So
But
is that, I'm sorry, I have some questions.
that's good.
But this, maybe you put up on Facebook, or maybe put up on YouTube, was that an iMovie? So you put it in front of the...
Yeah, so what I did there, this is the camera that I use. It's an HD camera. It's not 4K or, you know, anything like that. It's about 11 years old. It was, you know, it's what we would call a prosumer, professional / consumer style camera. In other words, it's not quite as good as you would need to do like for TV stations, although I've shot TV stuff with it, but it's really, you know, when you get into the technical details of cameras, and that's part of the reason they cost so much more, really good ones, is because of the lenses and the optics and all that stuff in them. But this one works really good for like what we did there. It has different settings. You know, you can adjust things like you can either go with automatic settings or you can do manual settings, and then you can to some degree control the gain, or you know, if it's low light, like the awards event the other night. There was some lighting up on the stage which kind of lifted you and the people that were performing. Michael was presenting down on the floor. I think if I was going to do it again, I probably would have set up a light, you know, so that he would have been illuminated a little bit better. You know, I mean, that really wasn't up to like TV quality. You know. It was okay, but it was, you know.
I think we talked about doing that, but we just never did do it.
Yeah, we just didn't do
We
it.
talked about it before.
We just didn't quite get there. But what we did do that was really good, and this made a big difference on the video, is we took an audio feed from Harry's mixer directly into the camera. And basically, it's just like running any kind of audio. I mean, this has the ability to take, these are XLR inputs, right? And so, essentially, all we did, and I don't know, we had a couple of little adapters and things. You're always going to need adapters, but we basically went from Harry's board, and we took a kind of a mono mix, Everything was mixed nicely. He got it the way he wanted, and we just put it right into the camera. And then I recorded it at a very low level. I mean, I could see when we were recording, I guess you can see like, let's see what's going on here.
So is that cord like a microphone cord?
Just a microphone cord. Yeah, it's just a microphone cord. Now, we did use a different kind of special cable that he happened to have that was like, had some noise reduction in it or something like that, which was good. That was another little thing. So anyways, there's like, I don't see it happening right now, but you can kind of see the levels. And so like, when you're recording something, some audio, it's important to record it at a more or less at a low level, not like, peaking level, because you can always increase the level when you're in playback or in a studio or something. But if you record it too hot, it's going to be distorted, and there's nothing you can do about it. If you recorded it too hot, it's messed up. It will never be any good. So you want to record things at pretty low levels, and then from there you can always turn it up. But the integrity of the sound needs to be recorded at a low level, like a low volume level. And okay, so now music videos. So I've talked a little bit about how we can use video and other things that we can do that I think is really good. So,
Quick question for you.
yes.
I thought you had two inputs, is that left and right, or?
It's for two different microphones. They call them channels. Okay, so it's not so much a left and a right. It's like that's one channel and that's another channel. So what you can do, let's say if you really want to get a little bit more advanced, you might want to take an audio from a mixer and put it directly into one channel, and then you might want to do something else, like put an external microphone or a wireless microphone out there and kind of get the room noise, So then you can. Now, iMovie is not great at this. You have to move to something a little bit more like Premiere or Final Cut Pro or something where you can really control the two tracks of audio, because iMovie tends to mix both channels into one. So what I did the night of the event, in order to, I put Harry's mix into both channels. And I did that, with only one input, but because there's settings on the camera, I could direct, like this is like, that's channel 1, and I put that into input 2, and then I took channel 2 and I put that into input 1, and then I put that into input 2. So basically the same sound was going into both channels.
Does that make it fatter?
It means it's not only on one side later on, yeah. So it does make it fatter, I guess, or more complete. So it comes out equally on both speakers. It's more mono, So, but let's say if you wanted to move to a little higher level of editing, then you might want to use your plug into the board with one, and then you might want to use something like a wireless mic, which you could do a couple of things. Like there's the camera mic, and that'll record like what's going on in the room. And you might want to do that. Like you could either use the camera mic, or you could find a place and set up another mic where you could maybe record what's coming off of the amplifiers or the speakers, but put the microphone closer than just the camera mic, which is like, let's say from here to there. You could put this a microphone or wireless like right up near the speaker, and that'll sound a little different than what's coming off the board, because his room tone is always different, right? So that's maybe more than you need to worry about, but you can get all kinds of technical about it. But
Now, I have a question.
yeah,
I've seen pretty professional setups where they're using a camera which looks like a XLR,
Right.
but they're used for video. Why
I mean,
would
it looks
someone...
like a regular old camera, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, well, all cameras now are equipped to record video. And in fact, some of the really nice Canons, I mean,
Yeah.
professionals are using those because they built video into those cameras. So it may look like just a regular single lens reflex, but it's got all this electronics in there to make it all different. Hey, Joe.
We did a video about 2 months ago, and they were using a red camera.
Yeah, that's high quality.
$90,000.
Yeah.
And they were taking spots with one of those Canons, which wasn't cheap. I mean, that was a $6,000 or $7,000 camera. Couldn't hardly, just sitting at the table when they were doing out the shots, couldn't hardly tell the difference in the quality.
Sure.
I mean, in the editing bay you could, but
Right.
the shots coming off that Canon were pretty amazing.
Pretty dang good. And like now, like they're selling 4K, that's like the big thing, TVs and everything, and they're just going higher and higher in this quality. You can't really see it with the naked eye, so it's like you're buying all this technology that you may or may not need. Now, if you're doing a Super Bowl commercial, then you maybe want that red camera, you know. But if you're just doing a video for the internet, that's overkill, you know. And that's what I was going to say is that you can do a lot with your iPhone. You know, they have on that sheet I gave. There's a little link to a video that I found on YouTube, which will enable you to basically do much better quality audio going into your iPhone. So instead of like just the kind of when Harry sets up, sorry Harry, but when you set up at Love and War and your camera's out here and someone's playing up there, you're getting all that room noise. When we shot, I used this camera maybe a week or two before the event at the opening bell, and I did not use, all I used was the camera mic. It was okay, it was okay, but it wasn't great, It would have been so much better if I took a feed off the board, or if I took the trouble to take my wireless and just drape this over one of those monitor speakers or something. Because then it would have been, even if it was just the monitor, without going into the board, you kind of drape that over the speaker.
That's a microphone?
This is a microphone. Pretty good quality too. This is good enough to be like, this is kind of wireless that a TV recorder might be using. You can wear it on your lapel or something like that. And you can hang this like over, let's say, an amplifier that's like a monitor, so you're hearing everything. And then that goes into, a transmitter. And then the receiver, that kind of goes on the camera and plugs into one of those channels, right? So you don't have to even be connected. It's wireless, basically. That's a good thing. That's a good way to do it. So now, Joe has a studio. When you do record your songs in the studio, now you're going to get your pretty much your best quality audio, right, in the studio, because that's why you go to the studio. And what I suggest is that that's a great time to shoot some video. So the performer can't be shooting his own video, but somebody can be shooting video, and I think if you want to do some videos to help to kind of push your songs a little bit more, maybe get them out there a little bit more, it's a good idea to shoot video when you're doing a recording session, because that video it's always going to be kind of interesting. It'll sync up to the recording, and then later, after it's all mixed and mastered and everything, then you take the recording, the finished recording, and then you can make a video out of the stuff you've shot. We did let's see, I can show you a little bit of I won't show a lot, but I can show you, we did something with my friend John Cronk, and I co-wrote a Christmas song, which was, you guys saw it, the East Texas song, right? So we rehearsed it. We rehearsed it in my apartment, and then we shot it, and then we recorded it in the studio, and then he mixed it, or he did some things. everything seems like it's all frozen up. I don't know what's going on. There's something funky in the room. Let's try something else here. Anyways, I highly recommend that when you do a recording, you could, get somebody like me or a friend with a camera or almost anybody. And
accessibility options.
what's going on? So this kind of
Use the tab key to navigate and press space to toggle.
Ben, help me. I don't know what's going on. I've never seen this. It's kind of a new computer. All right, well, I can show you on my phone. So just to give you an idea of kind of what you can do when you actually get to the point where you're making a recording and you want a video. Like, MP3s or WAV files are great, and that's how people are mostly sending their songs around. But, let's say Reverb Nation or something like that, or even on our site, you have places for videos, Video just adds another element to your level of exposure and everything else. And I just think it's a great thing. So, all right, hang on. Okay, this is kind of small, but you'll get an idea anyways once I can find it. Okay. Okay, so you can just pass it around. So the audio is kind of like what we recorded in the studio, but a lot of the video was when we were rehearsing, and it's not exact. In fact, there's not a single shot in there where the audio and the video was actually done at the same time. So we really but then afterwards we kind of faked it in the show because everyone kind of playing their instruments, and I kind of put it together. But in my living room there, that's this camera, stationary on a tripod. That's why there's not all that many shots. And I did set up a light so it would be brighter. And then it was like that, So then we got some footage in the studio, and you'll see how, if you saw the video, you'll see how, there's a variety of shots. Hopefully it keeps it a little bit interesting anyway, somewhat interesting. And you can see people playing their instruments to go along with the audio.
So was that in the studio when they were close-ups? And
the stuff where anything that's not in the living room is in the studio. And that video. So there's two different, basically two locations. Now, okay, so how do you make sure that, you're going to be kind of playing at the same tempo? You use a click track, right? You establish a click. That's what everybody does in the studios. Well, not everybody, but for the most part, especially if you're going to do dubbing of different parts, you have to have a click. And if you have a click, because once, that's part of what you do in rehearsal, is you determine what the tempo is going to be, right? And once if you have a click track, a metronome or something, right? You can say, okay, that's 125 beats per minute or whatever it is. And then you always play it at that tempo. And that helps you to stay kind of on the beat,
Are you guys still using SMPTE timecode for video or no?
That depends what kind of editing system. If you're doing something like iMovie, you're not really using timecode. But if you're using more sophisticated editing programs, you probably are using timecode.
So frame rate, if you're dealing with frame rate, right?
Hmm?
If you're dealing with the frame rate, that's when you're using SMPTE, right? If you want to lock everything accurately, that's when you use the code.
Well, you set a frame rate. The iPhones, they sort of do it automatically. But a camera like this, you have to set a frame rate. Generally, video, like TV type of video, it's like 30 frames per second, you know.
29.97 drop rate.
Yeah, something like that. It's a drop frame. So it's like, the only thing that you've got to worry about there is like when you, let's say whatever you recorded at, when you go to edit it, you've got to make sure that you set the editor to whatever frame rate you shot it at. Otherwise the sync will be off. So, I mean, there's a lot of technical stuff, but I mean, for the most part, let's say, I mean, you can do it all with your iPhone, really, if you want to think about it. You know, you could, let's say,
Just talk about the iPhone for most of us are going back.
yeah. Well, I think, the important thing is like, let's say if you're doing a recording session and you got some friend who's going to shoot some video with an iPhone. Okay, so the most important thing, I would think, especially with a small camera, or any camera really, the first thing you want to do is stabilize it. In other words, you don't necessarily want to be doing this, you know. You should have some kind of a tripod or a monopod or some way you could put it on something that, you know, just keeps it stable. That's really important. Because like, you know, you see this all the time. You see just, you know, people at concerts, they shoot, there's the band. And it's like going like this, and they're jumping up and down, and it's just, you know, it's okay, you were there, it looks great, you know, you feel good, but as far as other people, not really, you know. But, so, shoot it with your iPhone. You can import, like if you use a simple program like iMovie, let's say you're recording one song in the studio. Maybe it's just you. Maybe it's you with a couple other people. You're going to do it a couple times. So one way to do it is to have whoever's going to shoot the video is if you're going to record the song 2 or 3 times, 2 to 3 different takes, 4, whatever, you shoot video on each take. And you might shoot different shots each time. So then later on, when you go back, because it's only going to be one song, and the audio is just going to be the duration, let's say it's just the duration of the song, which you're going to get in a master from Joe, right? He's going to give you the audio. So now all you got to do really now is now you got all this video. So what are you going to do with it? So if you have a simple, so you don't just shoot the same shot 4 times. Let's say if you're singing, you know, I don't just shoot you this way 4 times. I shoot you this way 1 time, and then I might change the angle and shoot it again. Now, another thing that's really kind of important is make sure you start the camera before you start playing the song. How many times, you know, are you ready? Yeah. And then you start playing, and then they start rolling. Well, you missed the beginning of the song. So you got to make sure you're rolling before you start playing. It's a simple thing, but it happens all the time. Why do you think they, you know, action, you know? Well, you know, those cameras are rolling when they say action. That's why they say speed, that's to roll the cameras. So, things like that. And then if you have a simple, let's say if you're doing a song in the studio, you've got 4 different angles. When you get your final mix, then you can take your video, you lay down your audio track, and then you just, you know, the shots become like cutaways, you know, they're silent. You know, you record audio when you're shooting them because that gives you sync points. You might even want to do like the old chop, you know, because that's why the slate is done, because when, let's say when you're making a movie, you know, the people that are recording the audio they're not the same, it's not going into the camera. I mean, the camera is recording audio, but the principal audio is done by some guy or gal that's got, you know, headphones, and, you know, they're monitoring that audio really closely. But it all has to be sunk up in the end. So that's why they do the slate, because it's a visual when you see that the frame where the thing touches, but there's also an audio. So there's you know, if you see the waves You know, there's an exact frame where that happens, and if you can sync up your audio and your video, you're good. So
how do you get that good audio with an iPhone? Because, you know, just the iPhone.
if you just take the iPhone the way it is and you just record somebody playing, you're just going to get that. You're going to get all that.
Better audios or microphones you can hook up to?
Yeah, and if you go to that, I put a link there. If you go to that video on YouTube, that will kind of tell you what you need to get in order to have better quality audio going into your iPhone.
Yeah, I kind of played around a little bit with making a music video a couple years ago, and I learned this kind of simple way to sync up if you want to do lip syncing to your song.
Sure.
Yeah, you sing the song, record the audio track, and then you match the peaks and valleys. You can put it in your editor with the master vocal track. And that's kind of easy, simple way to find.
Yes, but
in
the
theory,
other
it should be the same speed because it's.
well, that's where the click track comes in.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
even when
that's kind of
you're-
good without a click track.
Yeah, but let's say if you record a song and then you want to shoot video like out on the porch or out under a tree or something
Yeah.
to go with that recording. It's a good idea to have that click track because that way you're going to be playing it at exactly the same tempo that you're recording it. It'll match up a little better. You know?
Yeah, well, if you're lip syncing, you're playing back on camera.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
Oh, you're playing.
If you're playing the same original, yeah.
Yeah, you're playing it back and you're listening to it and you're playing along to your
But
song.
recording it on camera too at the same time, so you can match,
That's right,
sync up the two
right?
audio
That
peaks and
works.
valleys. That's, for me, was a simple way to call this kind of.
That works. It's really not any different than what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. Because you're still finding those little peaks and valleys, and you're finding that spot. Oh, there's the peak, and then like you listen, then you take the master recording, and then you sync it up, and then you eliminate all that other stuff, all the the audio of you lip syncing, whatever you're doing.
I have a question. I know on the high end, I've seen it works. You have a multi-camera setup going into a console, video console, and you take shots and the director takes the cuts, right? Is there any solution like that for the iPhones or the Android devices where you have a third-party thing where you can sync up multiple iPhones through wire or something where
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I've never done that, but in order to do like multi-camera shoots and to be able to switch them sort of in real time without having a big old studio, it's a pretty expensive device, but you can get it.
No, but if you think about it, if you just lock all the iPhones and you record locally, once you drop all the footage in the editor, because I've done editing, right? If you have the same, I would say the sync point, right? You should be able to swap the shots. You know what I mean? If you have like a device which is starting all the iPhones at the same time. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but that's a sophisticated editing program to do that because you got to be able to see all those cameras.
It's like a live TV broadcast.
That's like a studio,
where you have close-ups.
that's not so much a do-it-yourself kind of a deal. That's a lot more sophisticated. If you want to take one shot from this camera and one from that and one from this, like in real time, well then all those cameras have to be set up and you have to be able to see them all in sync, play them back in sync, and then with a switcher, so you can take one shot, take another without any glitches. That's expensive. That's very expensive. That's not practical for this kind of stuff. Joe?
I was going to say, if you got all your footage and you can take this video in Pro Tools, you can drop your video into Pro Tools, which has a dedicated video track with.
So has Logic
time
Pro.
code.
Logic has that.
And, you can do some limited editing there with your sound and spit it out into a QuickTime or whatever.
Sure, but again, it's like, you're either going to have multiple cameras like what Ben's
Not
talking
multiple
about.
cameras, but to say if you get done and you're in the studio, well, you can just drop it in Pro Tools at the end in about 5 minutes. You can render a video sync to your audio with pretty good results. It's just coming out of Pro Tools.
Right, but again, it depends on like what are the shot. What is the shot? is it one shot from one camera of the entire
It'll
song?
never be one camera.
Yeah, see, so that's okay. I mean, that's kind of what we had at the event. You know, one camera. Jay's up there singing, you know, but it's really just one shot, you know. So I think to make videos a little more interesting, having more than one shot is a good thing. You know, it's okay to say like, okay, here's somebody singing their song, and the shot doesn't move, and it's like a rendition of it. Maybe the audio, hopefully the audio is really good, and the shot's okay, but there's no variety, so it's not, you're not going to create too much interest in the video unless you do something with the video. And that means, you know, you can throw stills in there. Let's say you took a bunch of stills in the studio. You know, you can use stills in the video too, and you can put little, you know, you can, like even with the iMovie, you can, you know, the old Ken Burns technique where you start with a still frame and it kind of, it's like the camera is moving within the frame and it kind of it pulls in, pushes out and things like that. You know, you can do things like that. You can throw stills in there. You can do all kinds of different things, you know, to just make it a little more interesting. I'll show you one that it's kind of like that with one of my songs. Let's see here. And none of this costs too much, you know, once you have the if you got the camera and all that, you know, the actual process, I mean, it takes a little time, it takes a little bit of work, but it's not really rocket science. But let me see, I should want to find something if I can find it. Where I took a song, again, something that we recorded in a studio, and then I just threw a bunch of video in there to kind of make it a little more interesting. Let's see if I got, here it is.
There was a commercial over the holidays. The kids having a snowball fight.
Yeah.
And it was all shot on an iPhone.
Right.
And it was crazy great.
That was
And
like
my kids
slow
could
motion
even,
stuff when
yep,
you
slow
jump.
motion
Yeah.
and jumping and regular motion.
Well, it's kind of amazing.
And it was
how much
amazing what a fun you can do on that.
you can do pretty much everything on the phone if you would think about it.
That's what it was. iPhone 11, right? Multi-camera. Yeah, you can do that in iPhone.
You know, one thing really simple that you see, and you don't even need a camera for it, basically, is people will make a lyric video from one photograph, like maybe the album cover or whatever, and just scroll the text. And
That's all doable in iMovie. You can have
yeah, you can do it in
scroll
iMovie. It's just, and it's
Okay, so
it's effective.
I'm going to show you again. You don't have to. Okay, so this is, just pass it around. You see, some of it's in the studio, some of it is like other shots. It kind of goes with the song.
So basically, you gotta put this stuff on iMovie before you put it on.
That looks like Michael's kitchen.
Where?
There you
If you
go.
want to edit it,
It's on iPhone, the multi-switcher.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can do that.
So yeah, I haven't explored that, but there's a lot. Like I say, I'm not an expert on all this stuff, but yeah, iPhone is. They're trying to make it so that you can do multi-cameras and all that stuff. I guess if you have multi-iPhones and you can hook them up together.
Yeah, you can log them through the Bluetooth.
Bluetooth.
Yeah. And all of them will consolidate. One of the iPhone will act like a switcher. So you don't need a hard piece of hardware. You can just lock it with
Is
Bluetooth.
there a separate app or anything?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you get.
It's
apps.
called a Switcher Studio.
Okay. So there you go.
So do you?
So maybe it's not so expensive.
Harry, do you?
It is expensive, you're right, if you do a hardware piece.
I use iMovie and I use a thing called Movavi. Yeah, it's a slide photo maker. And then I scroll the text and all that kind of stuff. You can put video on it and everything. But I use whatever I can figure out works.
Nice thing about iMovie is if you have a Mac, you have iMovie on it free.
Yeah.
Like GarageBand.
I see it down there, I use it.
It can be frustrating. I've taken VHS, old home movies, and imported it, and one was from a Christmas from 1991, and nobody had seen it. Except, maybe our family, but we were in someone's house, so it's like, I think I'll make a movie and send it out as a Christmas present. And I did it in iMovie, and, it's kind of, you have to learn it. I mean, there's a learning
There's a learning curve for any.
But it's very intuitive, you can click, you can move things around.
So, just to kind of finish up, don't be afraid of video, use video. I mean, it's great that Harry's been shooting all these videos. There's so many different things that you can use with video, and I think, one of the things that I like about it is for self-critiquing. In other words, you do a performance at Love and War or anywhere, doesn't matter, on a street corner. If you have video, now you might want to share it to show people that you're out there doing stuff. That's okay, but really, the greatest value I think is sort of as a self-evaluation tool. In other words, the video doesn't lie. I mean, the audio may or may not be great, but if you get decent audio, you can look at the video and see how you did. You can kind of go to school on yourself, and I think that's a great tool to sort of learn from. So I think the video, it's a great way of sharing what you're doing. It's a great way of enhancing what you're doing. You can reach more people through video, I think, than you can just through audio, right? Like, just think of YouTube, like how many people are getting all their stuff from YouTube. Well, if you just have an audio track, I guess you can make a YouTube video, but it's not going to be very interesting. But if you just take, let's say if you go to the studio and you rehearse, and you just shoot those two different things, put it together later, and you'll have at least somewhat interesting video. And so it's a way to generate more interest in your songs. It's a way for you to evaluate yourself to see how you're doing. Do you like the way you're singing? Did you pick the right key? Are you straining? All those things that you have to go through to get better. And I just think it's really useful that way. And then when you do get a really nice recording, then you not only have good recording, but if you shoot some video, then you have another way of presenting that piece.
May I make one suggestion?
Yes.
Whenever you're going out and you think you might be going to get a video made, wear colorful clothes like red, yellow, bright colors, because if you wear grays and browns and stuff, it just blends right into the background and you get a bad video. But like tonight, we're going to get a really good video. See all these pictures up here on the wall? That is beautiful. Makes for good video.
So, any more questions? I know we have critiques to go into.
Did a great job.
Good job.